Hi, everyone. As it was mentioned during the introduction, we are living through a very interesting time. Volatility, instability, tariffs. Finally, all of these issues are not just the regional issues, they are the global issues. So Latin America is not an outsider anymore. And every founder I know right now is bothered with a single question. What do we do in this environment? Do we optimize for sailing quick and getting some cash in? Or do we continue building, leveraging AI, creativity, and whatever efficiency, productivity improvements tools we have? So let's jump right in, and let's be optimists here for a second. So let's imagine that IPOs or any other forms of exits, M&As are back. Maybe not in 2025, 2026, but going forward. What kind of companies are going to be acquired from your perspectives? And what is the buyer's profile? Who's going to be buying?
You want I can start. I think in these rough times, you see the best companies coming out. We see Uber came out after the great financial crisis. So what we're seeing is that it's a time to build. It's a time to focus instead of hyperscaling and burning cash, you have to look back and say, how can I build a profitable business, a business that I can scale either only in Latin America or globally, but with good unit economics and with a financial future. I think we're at times where raising lots of capital and going crazy doesn't really work. It works more on focusing on building a great business. And if you're doing well, there is always going to be exit opportunities. And I think if you over-focus in the exit strategy, you forget the number one thing, that is building a great business, and is what founders should be building today.
As a venture-backed company, you cannot ignore exits, though. So assuming that exits are back in the picture, which is not the case today, neither in the US nor in Latin America, how do you conceptually think about exits? Because as a VC-backed companies, some of us are VC-backed companies, some of us are VCs. Everybody's optimizing for IPOs, but we know that in Latin America, the predominant strategy is M&A. So how do you think about exits in this element of, is it M&A, is it IPO, when the window is opening, and how do VC-backed companies need to optimize for this path in the environment? And obviously, building sustainable business is the first thing, but you still need to deliver ROI to your investors?
Yes.
Right, yeah. I think IPO has always been seen as the holy grail for any startup, right? And, but it's definitely not the reality for most of them, right? At least in Brazil, IPO has been the window's been shut for a while now. I don't see anything coming back from 2006, maybe 2027. But again, I think coming back to what Juan has said is the foundation is build a great business, right? M&As and IPOs are somehow not in your control. It's a lot dependent on the macroeconomics and also the industry segment specifically that you're building your business in. But the best way to either get acquired or maybe an IPO in the future is create a great business that you're probably not dependent on the market to survive. Create a business that people really want. I think regardless of the volatility, one thing is certain, that you have to build something that people want and people want to pay for it. So I think that basis remains the same.
Yeah, and IPO and M&A are two completely different things. IPO is not a finish line. IPO is a source of capital. So sometimes you should go public because it's the best source of capital you can get. Or for your strategy at the moment, going public might help you, for example, starting a new operation outside your country, having a more liquid asset to trade for M&As. So going public is a strategy, and raising capital at an IPO is not a finish line. So you should aim differently if you think about IPO and M&A. When we are living in high interest environments, of course, M&As are more a path for selling and looking at a finish line. But if you think on the long term, what you want to do, you want to generate returns. You can generate returns by selling your company or by generating cash. Being profitable and paying dividends is also a path to generate money to you and to your investors. So we cannot forget about that, right? Dividends is still a source of revenue for everyone.
I love what you said, that the IPO is a path to cash flow as opposed to the finish line. I really like this sentiment. I have this question about, we had a little bit of the conversation prior to the panel on, are you a feature or are you a product? So when you think about building the company, what are the signs that you should be tracking in terms of understanding whether your company has this opportunity to be a generational company where you have these dividends or IPO as a cash flow path open to you, as opposed to when you do better as part of somebody else's business, maybe because they have better distribution capabilities, maybe they have some product synergies. Like, how do you think about building independent as opposed to, Pismo being acquired by Visa, for example, right? It's a great example of successful M&A when the company leverages the distribution network of existing players. So what's your take on that?
Look, in my case, we're building a generational company, and as we were discussing in the launch, I think that for us, looking into M&A, looking into getting acquired by maybe Visa, MasterCard, or Stripe, or Adyen, we're going to lose the value of what we do. We offer decentralized software that enable companies to process payments around the world without needing to tie to an individual provider or acquirer. So if we get acquired, we're going to lose, I think, one of our most important features, which is being independent and giving the control to the companies to do whatever they want to do. So it's a little bit tricky in that case, because if we were looking to build a company or something that can scale faster, and I think there are many examples of this, and I don't think that selling to a bigger company is worse or better than doing an IPO. I think that as founders, we have to find what is the best for the company, and many times, as you mentioned, you have exits that are great. I think a great example of this is SpinPay that was acquired by Nubank. Today, NuPay is growing, and all the capabilities that Nubank acquired is making them much bigger than it was before. So it depends on the company, but we cannot lose or think that an M&A is some of like the losing game. I think M&A could be an amazing opportunity for local founders to go global, as you mentioned, and for others, maybe it's not the best option, like in the case of Yuno.
But go ahead.
Yeah, it's just one comment, which is kind of controversial. It's super hard to build a company. Why founders would aim to sell your company? You should aim to build a company to last. I don't know about you guys, but I've been building companies for the last 12 years now, and it's super hard to get to scale. So why sell?
Yeah, I completely agree with Marcelo what just said is. And I think the best way to get acquired is not wanting to be acquired, because that way you can put all your mental energy into building the company, which is super, super hard. When I look at it from an investor perspective, what we do today is we help founders create and grow their own business that is Strive. What we're looking for is business that can stand alone by themselves, right? I think technology has been able to unbundle a lot of industries. So you see a lot of mono-product companies that become very successful. SpinPay is one of them. Even Nubank, it started as it's a one-product a business. So position yourself to create a business that can stand alone by itself, and maybe that will be able to bring attention as M&A or stuff like that. But it's as hard as it is. I would focus on what you control, which is basically create your own company.
And look, I think this is super important. Even though as a founder, I always want to go all the way and create the biggest company, you have examples of M&As that were the reason of how the company scaled. A great example is Careem. Careem was the Uber of the Middle East, and they were competing head to head. And they got to a point right before COVID where Dara came to buy Careem, and they had all of this discussion, and the Careem founders were, we have two options. We either sell and we buy. Looking back, it was one of the best decisions for them. It helped the region, it helped the employees, it helped the investors. It was an amazing sell. It was great for everyone.
Very opportunistic though,
but
right?
But also they could have said no, and Careem would have gone bankrupt because COVID hit a couple of months after they closed. Yeah. So I do agree, but also when we look back, there have been amazing exits and also companies that are still working. If you go to the Middle East, Careem's still there, still doing many of the things. But it could have been that bankrupt company because the founders prioritize their ego instead of the best for the rest of the stakeholders.
Yeah, but we not know that the M&A is coming, right? So position yourself to be standalone, but look at M&A as more opportunistic perspective, right? 100%. If the right one comes along, that's good, right? And then it comes back to what the founder, the team of founders really think psychological to what is their end game. It's fine to be an M&A, right? It's fine. But if you become yourself, put in your position that you become hostage to an M&A or a future IPO, that's probably bad business.
100%.
Totally. And by the way, I totally agree that the best strategy to sell is when you don't want to sell.
Exactly.
You have all negotiation leverage that you can possibly
100%.
get. Building something is extremely hard. I have not built fintech's infrastructure, but building a media platform, it's extremely hard. So I totally agree with the point that you mentioned. On the building for 12 years side, and all of you have been building companies for a very long period of time across very different market cycles, when the capital was abundant, when it was extremely scarce. So how did your scaling and building playbook evolve across these different environments? What are you optimizing for today? And what, if anything, you're missing from the old good times of 2021?
I'm missing low interest rates.
Free money.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned on the way was when you have available money and cheap capital, it doesn't mean you need to take the capital. It's cheap, but it's not cheap for everyone. It's cheap for the ones that actually need capital. So over time, I learned that you should raise when you need to raise. You need to raise to put more money on your operation, to scale your operation. You need to raise because you need more capital for regulatory meetings, for example. Then you can grow your operation. So when you need to raise, you have a clear use of proceeds, you should raise. Sometimes when other founders ask me if they need to raise right now, if they should raise right now, the first question I ask is, what are you going to do with the money? It's clear for you what you're going to do with the money, because today it's super expensive to raise capital because basic interest is 14.25. So the investor is looking into that. The investors, they usually have three options. They have public markets, they have basic interest, like investing in government bonds, and they have the opportunity on investing in you. So they are going to decide which one of these is best for this environment. If they have an option of 14% yearly basis with minimum risk or sovereign risk, you should be expecting at least a 25 to 30% return for that specific investor. So if you know for sure what you're going to do with the money that is going to help you grow at least 30% on a yearly basis, then you should get the money. Doesn't matter if it's 14% or 2%, you should get the money. And over time, I also learned a new term called YORO, Y-O-R-O. You only raise once when interest rates are high, because you can raise enough money to get to the next level of your company, maybe get to profitability, or maybe get to your break even. So you should raise only once to get to that point, and then you don't raise anymore until you have a specific need for cash.
I'm curious to hear Juan Pablo's perspective. We had a little chat before on building the global company from scratch and what kind of advantage it gives. So I'm just curious, how do you think from the perspective of interest rate constraints?
Look, money is like a drug. Like when a company starts getting out of cash, they want to get more cash. And I think if we look back at the 2018, 19, 20, where companies were raising at these crazy valuations, there were decacorns, there were unicorns, they were getting hundreds of millions of money. You can build an amazing company with hundreds of millions of money. You can also build an amazing business. You can build a decacorn with a couple millions. Or some companies, you can also do it just bootstrapping. What is important as a founder is that you need to adapt to the situation. when, obviously, if you look at Rappi, we raised a lot of money, we built an amazing company, and the times were there, and I don't think we regret that because that was the situation. We were competing against global companies, and we're doing many things. Now, when I look at Yuno, we raised right almost at the top of that craziness, and I remember when we first closed the round, we sat down, and the plan was to go all in, to spend a lot of money, to get all the customers, revenue didn't matter, and like 4 weeks in, markets crash, and our investors start calling us to get results. They're like, are you profitable? I'm like, hey, I'm a 3-month-old company. Obviously, I don't have anything. And they're like, no, you need to start getting revenue. You need to start signing contracts. And we had to completely change the plan. So we built Yuno more with this idea of building this like long-term company. We were able to go and raise more money. We need to get revenue since day one. We were able to get to $1 million ARR only 8 months after launching, which was impressive at the moment. Today, you have AI companies getting to $1 million in like 2 months, but those are different times. And I think that what you need to focus is making sure to adapt and make sure the business adapt. Today, we're being a lot more efficient. We're measuring what is the ARR per employee. We're understanding each person that needs to come into a company. Do we really need this person or do we need AI? And I think it's something that we're going to discuss later. But you need to adapt to the situation and not focus only on how much money can I raise. It's what kind of business can I build? And then do I really need to bring more people into a company to build it? Which today with AI is making it much, much easier.
AI. I love that. Well, the common theme is profitability, efficiency of growth, and raising when you absolutely have to. So AI, it seems like it drives a measurable impact on performance of the companies. It used to be theoretical. Everybody were like, let's plug in AI on our forehead, right? But today, we already have the cases of companies whose improvement in terms of time to revenue, in terms of the number of overheads they employ is dramatically different from before the era of this agent AI. So I'm curious, for you specifically, where are you already using AI to maybe reduce operational friction, fraud compliance, onboarding, and what is the measurable impact of AI are you seeing right now? And how should we be thinking about the impact of AI on high growth tech companies right now and more of a longer term perspective? From the founder's perspective, super curious, and from the investor's perspective as well.
Right, so from an investment perspective, I think AI has become very, very real, very, very fast, right? So if you look at what founders are doing now, if you're not looking into how AI, I would look at, as a founder, I would look at AI 2 ways, right? One of the things is how can AI make my company better, either sell more, be more productive, reduce cost, and increase the amount of money that I make per employee, as we discussed, but also how AI is going to shape or reshape the industry I'm in, right? So there's the two-sided approach here. And I think it's very real. If you're not looking into how your company can be better with AI, you're probably stuck in the past, and you should review that as soon as possible. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. I think everybody's sort of feeling sort of a fear of missing out, and every day there's something new on AI, and the risk here is to become paralyzed to everything that's going on. So you have to just get started. If your larger pain point is sales, start there. If it's onboarding, or it's customer success, start there. But just get started.
We do have a lot of experimenting going on right now. So all the developers, they're trying out Copilot and other AI tools to help productivity. And we do have other features that are spread through the company to help our team to be more productive on a daily basis. However, there's one product that we developed which is an anti-fraud for financial products in overall. And on this one, we do have a specialized team building sophisticated software, LLMs and AI to prevent fraud. And this is something that is super, super important because the same way that we are using AI to improve the defensibility of the business, fraudsters, they are also using AI to attack business. And over the last few years, we've been leaving this evolution from the fraudsters trying to attack potential customers of ours. So one example that I believe it's worth sharing is everyone here that have a digital account in a bank account already went through the process of having, taking a selfie, taking a photo of your document. All this data is collected and it's processed to validate that you are you, right? Then you have the second layer, which is an anti-face spoofing. We are trying to avoid someone using an image of you, a video of you, and then you have another technology to avoid people that use 3D printing to print your face and use a mask of you. Those are all in the past. We already know how to prevent this type of frauds, and those are already in the past. Right now, what we are living is fraudsters. They are so sophisticated with their models that for a human being to identify the image is almost impossible. It's a lot of pixels, combined with black and red and green. You don't understand the image, but the image is representing the calculation to go through those systems, and it's not possible for a human being to validate that anymore. So you must use more sophisticated algos, more sophisticated technology to combat that, because a human being cannot do that anymore.
Look, for us, we're using AI in all the different aspects of the business. I think like 6 months ago, I sent this email company-wide, and I got into the all hands, and I say, hey guys, everyone needs to be using one thing in AI, if it's ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, but in your day, you need to be opening and using at least 2 hours of the day. And at the beginning, people were like, but how does this work? How do we do it? We did a hackathon, we did a bunch of things. If you fast forward to today, it's crazy how many processes and things that we used to do with a bunch of people, we're doing it internally with AI. So in the development, obviously, we have, Cursor, we have all these new things to develop, and AI is becoming like junior developers developing some of the things, while the developer is basically just making sure that what the AI agent is building. On top of that, QA and a bunch of different things that used to be done by teams are being done by AI agents. And today we're being able to, I need to get the number for you and I will be back on that, but there is a percentage of errors that are being basically fixed automatically by AI. And in terms of sales, operations, there were things SDR, so getting after and going after all the companies that we should target. These are things that today we do completely automatically. Like yesterday, I wanted to find, for example, what are the 100 companies that we need to focus on in Europe and APAC. I boarded my flight, I put ChatGPT research to do it. When I landed, I have the 100 companies with their annualized revenue, with the annualized transaction. And these are things that before, I used to call someone and be like, hey, can you please send me the list of the companies before I land? Today, it's being done automatically with AI.
It was a time drag before. Thank you guys for this very intellectually satisfying conversation. And one thing is clear, that everything is changing right now. We live in a very different time at the intersection of technology, macro, and local market readiness as well. And I feel the founders who understand the shift and are flexible enough to the flexibility point to adapt are the ones that are going to dominate the next decade of tech coming from Latin America. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.